Hello, good afternoon. Hi, everyone. I hope you had a chance to get to know some of the fellow commsHERO in the networking lounge just now, or managed to catch up on any sessions that you have missed. So we're joined now by Priya and Advita. Priya is joining us all the way from Canada. And did you say it was 10 o'clock, Priya?
10 o'clock in the morning, yes.
So good morning.
Good
Good
morning.
morning to you. So Priya is an award-winning professional communicator with a passion for driving strong performance from the inside out. She's the president and the owner of Inner Strength. And Advita is the founder of Comms Rebel, an internal communication employee experience consultancy. She's also the co-founder of Leader Like Me, a global membership program which helps underrepresented women of colour succeed further in their career. So I'm going to hand over to these lovely ladies. As usual, if you've got any questions or anything, put them in the Q&A tab. Make sure you add in all your comments, add your feedback, get involved in the conversation. This is going to be a really, really interactive session. So feel free to chat away. All right, I'll hand over to you.
That's great. Hello, everyone.
Hello, everybody. So I'm not in my lounge, by the way. This isn't my grand lounge. I'm actually in a co-working space in London. So hopefully it's not too noisy for you all. And if you can't hear me, then please put it in the chat function. But I think it'd be quite nice for everybody to kind of kick this session off. If you could tell us where you're all tuning in from, and see if there's anybody outside of the UK, like Priya in Canada. I know we had the lovely Sarah joining a couple of sessions from New Zealand or Australia, sorry. So let's see where Australia. So let's see where everybody is. And as Kate said, this is going to be a really informal chat today because we want to have a conversation with everybody rather than doing slide deck. So we want you to feel comfortable about asking us questions about what we're going to chat about today. And obviously the title gives it away that we are going to talk about the role of internal comms in equity, diversity, and inclusion, but specifically inclusion. And I'll hand over to Priya to kind of tell you a little bit about what we're doing in this space.
Yes, so a lot of you who do follow us are aware that Advita and I are co-founders of A Leader Like Me, but we have a passion for internal communication. One of the things we found over the last few years is that combination of the two areas in terms of the work that we're being hired for from a consulting perspective, me in North America and Advita in the UK. And we have recently been contracted by Kogan Page to write a book on the role of internal communication in DEI, EDI, whatever we call it, right? The equity, diversity, and inclusion. And it's been it's been a great journey for us. The one thing that, first of all, neither of us have ever written a book. We've written lots of blogs and opinion pieces and things on behalf of executives, but it's the first foray into the book journey. And then I think the thing that's been really surprising for us, I think it's something I didn't expect, which is I'm learning along the way. So it's almost as if the book is writing itself. Would you say that, Advita? It's changing. It's not necessarily it's definitely what we intended. So the purpose is very strong and the goal is very strong, but how it's coming together is really a bit of an evolution as we learn in the space as well.
Totally. And what we wanted to do with this session today is, as Kate quite rightly said, is we want to have a conversation with you. So we did debate on doing a slide deck and going through our kind of process, but we thought, you know what? No, this is a great opportunity for you folks who have joined us today to share your thoughts, to share your concerns, to ask questions, because we're right in the middle of the book right now. We're transitioning into the how section of the book, and we want to make sure that we're addressing your concerns and your thoughts and your ideas as well in the book, so you have the opportunity to contribute if you wish to as well. So it is, as I said before, that this is a safe space. We want to, there's no judgment from Priya and I. As Priya said, that both of us are learning a lot while we're writing this book, and we are discovering a lot about ourselves as well, and where our learning gaps are. And the world of inclusion is evolving every single day, and it's impractical to be 100% knowledgeable in this space. And every single day, as James Clear, if anyone's not read his book about atomic habits, he always talks about being 1% better than yesterday. And as Priya often says, it's progress, not perfection. So we've got a little poll for you to kick this off to kind of understand where we are with your kind of comfortableness around inclusion. So I think Kate is going to launch the poll. Here it is. So when it comes to talking about inclusion in your organisation as communicators, whether you're internal facing or external facing, how do you feel about it? And where are you on the kind of comfortable scale? So we'll give you a minute, well, 30 seconds, don't let me do it, click a button. Is it working? Just do a little thumbs up if it is. Yeah, it is. I can see it. Brilliant. And then hopefully we should see the results, see how everyone is feeling. Do we see the results, Kate? Will you just pop the results up on the
I can
screen?
see the results.
Oh, good. I'm
And
glad you can.
yes, and what I'm seeing is that we've got about 30% who are saying very, very comfortable, while we have quite a large majority, almost eking up to 72% now, that are saying we're okay. So there's not anyone here who's saying we're not very comfortable, but definitely where most of us are okay. And that's probably what we're seeing when we're speaking to human resources, IC, leadership in the space. It's very, very consistent. So that's not a surprise. So hopefully that means there is, people who are really interested in having some solutions and having some ways of working through this progress and process, as well as we all learn together. So one of the things, 70% of you said you're not very comfortable. And even those who say they are comfortable, we'd love in the chat for you to talk about what you think your biggest barrier is to progression on EDI.
And feel free to DM if you don't want to do it publicly as well. You can DM us if you feel a bit more comfortable doing that. But so we'll share about some of the lessons that we've learned while we've been working with clients and also writing this book. And one of the areas that we often get questioned about is, as a communications professional, what role do we have to play in this? Because EDI is often part of the HR team, or it's dedicated or it's the responsibility of the EDI person in the organization, and we're just told what to send out and when to send it out. And so how can we possibly contribute? And through our work that we've done with the book and the research that we've done, is that communications actually plays a significant part in making sure that the messages that are sent out there are inclusive and are contributing to the organization in the way it should be contributing. And it's not, we often say, don't we, Priya, that it's moving from performative to performance. And many of you, I'm imagining right now, are celebrating and raising awareness of Black History Month in your organization. And if you follow me on social medias, you may have seen that I shared a little snippet about how you can avoid being performative during this month. Because what you may discover is that you've been asked as communication professionals to send out lots of comms around Black History Month and sharing stories of your Black colleagues. But one thing that we've uncovered during our research and the work that we do is that the kind of book stops there, and there's no outcome. It's not outcome driven, and there's no reason about why this month is happening and what difference has actually happened to this characteristic in the organisation with Black colleagues in terms of their promotion opportunities, the opportunities they get to be part of projects, the opportunities they get in terms of pay equality as well. And that's something to consider, and that's what we kind of talk about, moving from performative to performance. Priya.
Absolutely. And so I'm trying to look at, I like Jules said that she wants to move away from tokenism and just looking at one area of EDI. I think the one thing that's been really fascinating with me as we've gone through the book is, first of all, the history of EDI and DEI and human rights, right? So a lot of the things that we talk about and what we've researched is that this conversation has not just been going on for the last 2 years; it's been going on for hundreds of years,
Centuries.
and centuries, right? And I think that what we realize is that even though it feels very current, what we're probably doing is going through a revolution right now. And, we're hoping that revolution moves us forward versus takes us backwards. And I think that the chaos or the discomfort that we feel because tokenism is easy. Would you say, Advita, the check the box exercises, the adding the individuals, the to roles, the check the box in terms of putting people's faces and using the right stock imagery and celebrating the calendar of events over the year, is easy. That's the easy stuff. What we're really trying to say is how do we actually change the operations and thinking of organizations, and what's the role of internal communication to do that?
Mhm. And what's the purpose of doing this? So I'll go back to the Black History Month because it's quite current in the UK. So if you're based in the UK, you probably have been part of this or seen various comms around this. But one of the questions I always ask people is why are you doing this? What's the purpose? What difference are you hoping to make? What difference have you made since last October? Or if you're based in the US or Canada, what difference have you made since last February? And are you talking about um, the, the the recognition and the contributions that people are made to the workplace and beyond that all year round? And the same applies to Pride Month as well. Same applies to International Women's Day. I don't know if anybody saw when it was International Women's Day that there was a bot that was developed on Twitter that said that every time somebody posted something about how great they are and how they believe in equality for women, the bot actually retweeted their tweet and said, "You've got a gender pay gap of X amount in your organization." And he saw hundreds of organizations retracting their statements and deleting their post and becoming very like non-descriptive of what they were saying, which is what happens when you go down the performative route. So
Yeah.
as communication professionals, we have the opportunity here to advise and guide our leaders on the reputation side of what we are doing, as well as externally and internally. Because people will read this and notice this, and people now have choices more than they've ever had before in terms of where they commit their support and where they work in terms of loyalty as well.
And I'd be curious, that it's a great comment on that bot, Advita, in the chat. I'd love to hear from you in terms of, do you think that bot actually helped move things forward? Because the reaction whenever it's almost as if when somebody's calling you personally or professionally on a microaggression or a macroaggression, is your first reaction defense or is it reflection? And I'd be curious about how many of you out there feel about that. One, yes, we need to be prepared, right? I think that we're getting out of the performative stage and moving into some progress, which is exciting for a lot of us. Whatever, because we're working towards equality, and I think everyone wants to move into a world where everybody feels that they matter and they belong. I think that, like, I'm a real optimist from that perspective. But it's hard. This is hard work. This is work that it's hard not to take personally when things like that are happening. And I again, what are your thoughts on, do you think this type of calling out works? Does it play a role? It can. Absolutely, because sometimes it's better to create the awareness. But what I get afraid of, I think, or what I fear sometimes, Advita, is that it actually makes people stop trying to do anything.
Yeah, 100%. And we're very cautious and conscious of people reacting publicly about certain mistakes that people make, because what we've uncovered in the world of inclusion is that people will make mistakes. We make mistakes all the time, Priya and I, in our learning journey. And the fear of people actually saying something in case they are called out for it, saying it wrong or it is a mistake, does actually stop progression. And people do become quite defensive. And this is why we talk about acknowledging, what is going on around you and being aware that people are still on a learning journey, and some people are further ahead, and some people are slightly behind, and some people haven't started yet because they just don't know what to do. And we're living in times where there's just lots going on right now, and there's lots of information for people to observe. There's lots of stuff going on. People don't know what they should be saying, they shouldn't be saying, and it's just noisy in organisations right now. So when it comes to, and this is the reason we talk about equity rather than equality. So it'll be quite interesting in the chat function if people could put yes if they know what equity means and if they can tell the difference between equity and equality. So just I'll do a thumbs up if that's easier. So who knows the difference between equality and equity? Because this is a subject that we often have conversations around. There's a couple of thumbs up coming up. Anybody in the chat, would it be helpful for us to kind of describe this a little bit and further, or is everyone comfortable with that? Because the reason we talk about equity is because it is about making sure that we're fair and everybody has access to the same information, but it's also being aware that not everybody will have the same privileges as others to access that information or be part of that conversation. So one of the things that we often get told is, and if you follow both of us on social media, we often do speak up about representation and fair representation on things like this, the conferences and the panels that we're part of. And the reason we say this and we say fair representation is that we want to make sure that voices are heard. But often people get a bit uncomfortable with the conversation and they say the words, we want to hear from the
Oh, I think we just
best people.
there we go. We just lost you, Advita. I think are you back?
I'm back.
Okay.
Troubles of working remotely. So we always talk about where we want the best people on the panel. We want to make sure that we hear from the best people. But what you need to recognize is that some of these people that may have access to these panels have got the privilege of having the opportunities that others don't have, which is why we created our underrepresented speaker list. Because there are people out there who are really good at what they do and are incredible, but their voices are being hidden or they're not getting the opportunities that other people may get. And if you look around the publics that you're serving and the customers that you're working with, and you look at the representation at C-suite or at your senior level, board level or senior management level, you often don't see that representation. And it can jar a little bit about some of the conversations that are taking place in organizations or businesses. So as communication professionals, we do again have the opportunity to ask those uncomfortable questions. So when we sat around the table and we don't see representation around that table of the people that we work with or the customers that we're serving, then we should be able to say that some people are missing around here and we need to invite them and be the ally that we can often be when we have that privileged position of having the umbrella view of an organization.
Absolutely. Now we've, Advita, we talked about the fact that we have written 6 chapters of the book, and one of the things we were going to share was about kind of what we learned as we were writing the book. What do you think is the thing that stood out to you at the most?
The biggest learning point for me was around bias, and I know we all talk about bias quite frequently, especially around unconscious bias training and the bias that we are aware of in ourselves. But I think one of the biggest learning opportunities for all of us here is to recognize that in the communications profession we are not representative of the publics that we serve, and often teams are very according to CIPR and PRCA research, is white dominated, female dominated, and white dominated. There's limited representation of people with disability. There's limited representation of people of different ethnicities. And there's also limited representation, of people from different religious backgrounds. So often when we're talking about campaigns and we're talking about messaging, when we look around the room within our own team or if you're a solo communicator, and even if your organization is not representative, it can be hard. So one of the things that we've written about in the book is around bias and just being aware of what this bias looks like and slowing down our thinking at times, because in the busy role that we have, we often make decisions very quickly. And if as communication professionals, we're very busy and we have a to-do list as long as our arm many times, and we just need to get things off our table. But the mistakes and the challenges that we often make is because we haven't slowed down our thinking on, hang on a minute, is this fair what we are writing, and is this accurate representation, or am I just sending this out as a bit of a performative and tokenistic gesture? And if it is falling into that tokenistic and performative gesture, then it's important to step back from that and really think about it. And I think somebody put in the comments about, do you have a EDI strategy, or do you have a comm strategy for EDI? And they're both very different. And it's to kind of really
Yes.
think about what is it that we're trying to do here. And that's what I want you to think about is, do we have this strategy? Do we have a real EDI inclusion strategy that demonstrates the differences we're trying to make here? Or are we just doing a little bit of a tokenistic performative thing by doing all the awareness months that are out there and putting up a poster of somebody who looks different from the majority? And that's our buyers can often do that for us.
I think that one of the things that I really kind of learned is I created I worked on the chapter on leadership, and leadership is a lot of things. It's somebody had asked a question in terms of how do we get leaders on board with realizing this is more than just the performative exercise, but that role of leader is critical in terms of really understanding the why. I think that was the big thing when we were researching is uh, when I work with organizations, I've worked with a lot of organizations, here in Canada and North America, and talking to the university about how critical it is to attract those foreign students and make sure that when they come on campus, they understand that they belong because it's financially important for them, but also it's the right thing to do. Working with, a Department of Justice here in Canada, realizing that the people who are writing the policies that are, impacting people who are underrepresented, unfairly or more, are not don't actually have that perspective, and that's hurting the way that they're actually delivering policy, especially as the guardians of the rights of like the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Think about that disconnect there. So we've spent a lot of time with clients, and I know you've done work in that space as well, Advita, really trying to understand, having that conversation with leadership at the table on why is this important to us? Why is it important to our strategies? Why is it important to our reputation? Why is it important from a recruitment and retention perspective? Why is it important from a risk perspective for us to get ahead of this and embed this into our programming so that we're not dealing with crises on a regular basis? So we're actually getting ahead of it as part of the planning, and that's been great. But leader is one role. We've got the executives are one role, but we also have DEI leaders who are playing a very specific role in terms of delivering the plans for the organization, the comms leaders who should have a comms plan to support, because what I'm also seeing is the DEI plan has been delivered by the HR team or the DEI team, wherever that sits in the organization, and then they can't get employees on board. In fact, they're seeing a lot of resistance and resentment as they try to move these things forward. The people managers and the role they play is so important. And then we've got these leaders who are the influencers, and sometimes they're influencing towards good, and sometimes they're influencing towards resistance. We need to know who those leaders are in our organizations in order to deliver the progress that we want.
Definitely. And one thing I do want to say before we go into questions is that inclusion is about everybody. It isn't about, the South Asian woman working in finance or the black man who's working in IT. It's about absolutely everybody in your organization. And it's important that folks have the opportunity to contribute to the conversation regardless of their protected characteristic. And everybody has all sorts of stuff going on. And I'm often asked in my workshops and the inclusion workshops that I do is that, well, what about the white people in this organization? We're not counted for and we're not included in the conversation. And I understand, and it's an uncomfortable question to raise for some people, but inclusion is about making sure that everybody has the opportunity to thrive in the organization and succeed. It's not about taking away from one group and giving it to another. It's about creating equity so people have a fair chance to keep progressing. And if you don't have that in your organization, there's something critically wrong in terms of bias and behaviors in your business. If you're only seeing a certain characteristic getting promoted in your organization, of being given opportunities or being uh, given equal pay and all those things, then there's a problem. And that is why the focus is often on those protected characteristics and the wider characteristics. But it's important to have that chat. And when people do say, what about a group for, white men? Why can't we have a group for that? Which is, I'm asked that regularly. It's like, well, let's have a conversation about why that is needed. Let's have a conversation about why you feel excluded. And it's okay to have those conversations. Nobody should ever feel dismissed in asking a curious question about what is happening here. And as Priya said, we're approaching this revolutionary side where there is a bit of anger, a lot of anger, in fact, in this space. But as communications professionals, we can definitely set the scene and help have those productive disagreements and curious conversations in our organisation so we can help people progress. And that's what this whole thing is about. It's about cultivating an inclusive culture so people can thrive and be the best they need to be so they can progress and contribute to the objectives of that organisation.
One of the analogies that kind of came to fruition during the writing of the book was how people reacted. I tried to create an analogy in terms of the reactions that I'm seeing when we're doing employee consultations on DEI, and one of the pieces is it's flashlights. So people who you're consulting with are sitting there with a flashlight looking for themselves in the plan. And if you imagine that, thinking about how do you address all of the concerns as you go through an EDI planning session. It's not just about specific concerns, but everybody's concerns. Make sure they're included because we're learning that as we go through. There's also this analogy of mirrors that a lot of this work is very personal. Right? Even though it's professional and you're being asked to deliver something from the organization, it becomes very personal. And what you're doing is you're looking in a mirror and you're reflecting. And sometimes if you don't like what you see, and we've seen we've actually been there where we don't like what we see. We've seen our biases, we've seen our privileges, we've seen these things that make us want to stop and get defensive. We really need to again focus on the reflection versus the defensiveness. And the last analogy is those beacons, and those beacons are those guiding lights, and they could be warning lights too, right? And we're working on who are those beacons and what are the stories we need to listen to in order to deliver what we want for everyone to move together through it. And it's been a really interesting to watch people's reactions, but understanding those analogies so that when we're delivering plans, we're addressing challenges and issues along the way, and we're part of the conversation that keeps happening. We keep saying this is not a campaign. So much of DEI or internal communication sometimes gets treated by a PR plan, like a PR plan, like a campaign. But what we're here to do is drive conversations because the conversations inside our organizations and inside our profession are actually going to move things forward because we're going to get used to them. We're going to get used to some things that are uncomfortable and eventually they become comfortable. And that's part of the change as well.
Definitely. So I've got a couple of questions in the chat function. So we've got Emma, who's done a statement, who says, we're starting on our EDI journey, trying to spend time on the wider characteristics such as poverty too, as this can impact as well. And 100% Emma, that not only cost of living is going to be a key part of inclusivity, and especially as Christmas is coming up. So there'll be lots of Christmas parties, there'll be lots of raising, putting funds in for charitable stuff as well. And what I would say on this very quickly is be very mindful of this. If your organization is not paying for your party at Christmas time and you're expecting colleagues to contribute to this, not everybody's going to be feeling comfortable enough to do that. So be mindful about how you do this. And even if you are paying, then think about the transport and taxes and people making their way to the venue, wherever that is, because it's going to be tough for a lot of people this winter. And we just have to be very careful about what that looks like. And then on alongside that, we've also got to consider mental health in this as well. And often mental health is a discussion that is isolated or away from inclusion and equity and diversity, when in fact is very much part of that conversation. And you're going to have lots of colleagues who are going to be struggling with their mental health and mental well-being. And just so we just want you to be very mindful of that. And Christmas is often the time where you'll have lots of people who will be talking about presents and gifts and secret Santas and all of that kind of stuff. And there will be people in your organization who just won't be able to contribute or be part of that. So be careful about how you message this and how you have that conversation and how your leaders are messaging this and how they're having those conversations, and just raise that awareness with your team, because often EDI, like as I said to you before, it can focus on protected characteristics and not necessarily things outside of that. So I just want to kind of raise that as a point to take away. Are we at time, Kate?
We've got 5 minutes. So
amazing.
If anybody's got any questions, keep them coming in. Don't miss out on the opportunity for Advita and Priya to answer your questions. We've got a a comment here from Stevie about saying where you are looks very posh.
Oh, see, I mean that. I am in a very posh part of London. I'm on Pall Mall in the IOD offices. It's very grand. Yeah. So if you've been here, you'll know what I mean. It is a very grand space, but it's a brilliant space in the middle of London. But yeah, very grand. Somebody recognises it. We've had Jules saying, actually, I just spotted Jules's point at the top, which she said about, and I know you've had lots of conversations, and we both have, but I know specifically you, Priya, recently have had conversations with leadership who just don't get it, who don't understand the importance of the work, of this work as well. What have been your kind of key points for Jules?
It really is about, we've talked a lot in communication about our manifestos, and there's always an opportunity to say, who are we? Our values, our mission, our strategies, who are our customers, who are our communities, who are the people who work for us, and what does that mean in terms of moving forward so that people feel included and belong? And then what does that also translate to? Because I've spent most of my life in corporations, really trying to understand what does this mean for the organization and its future, and why is it important. So we discuss a little bit about that in the book in terms of what are the conversations you need to have, but a lot of it starts with the research, right? So we talk about our 4 A's at Vita. It's acknowledging that there is a challenge that we need to address, so that has to happen before we can move forward. It's then doing the research and being aware of what does that mean to you, what does your organization look like, what are the plans, what does that again mean in terms of an inclusive strategy, and then having the action plan that then is measured so that you have accountability. So really thinking about that full on, but until you actually have that acknowledgement, it's very difficult to move forward. So it's working on the why, is really a important first step.
Yeah, I'm going to be talking about this in our Diversity in Action virtual event, which takes place from the 7th of November. And we've got some incredible speakers talking about how to persuade and encourage C-suite leaders to buy into some of this work that is taking place in organizations. So if you want to take part in that, then the details are on our website, aleaderlikeme.com. And we've got solidarity tickets as well. We want to make sure that people who want to be part of it can be part of this without any budget, and that's very important to us. So please do check that out. The other thing I do want to say is, and I say this all the time to the clients that I work with, is it's worse pretending to care than not caring at all. And that's very important because you are setting people up for a fail in that organization. If you're doing things that are not being done with a true intention, you're setting people up for fail, and it's not fair. So I would also be very, again, when you're talking to leaders and C-suites, is just don't do it. If you're not doing it with intention and you're not doing it for any value and you're not helping people progress in that organization, then it's best not to do it until you're ready to do it. And I will always give that advice because otherwise it can be quite triggering and quite traumatic for those characteristics and stakeholders and audiences who believe that you do care. So that's something to kind of remember and take away as well.
And then, you've said it a few times at Vita that we focus on progress, not perfect. Our goal at Vita, and I talk about this all the time, is we'd hate to move backwards. We really want to move forward. So, how do we encourage leaders? How do we encourage our organizations into making some progress, moving that one step? I'm working on a chapter right now talking about the diversity continuum. What does that look like? And you need to step like you have to take each step in the right direction. So it's not wrong if you're recognizing celebrations and celebrating Black History Month. There's nothing wrong with that. But what's next? How do we then move forward from there?
Yeah, definitely. And the final thought, if there's no further questions, is that we both of us highly encourage you to ask questions and be curious, and message both of us if you are struggling or stuck, or you have a thought that you think, oh, I possibly can't share that because people may take it the wrong way. We want you to DM us and we want you to reach out to us and have those conversations because it's, another sentence I often say is that silence is a privilege at times. And if you feel like you're being silenced because you're scared of being, called out or something's not, not quite sure if that's the right frame of mind or whatever, then message us. That's what a leader like me is there to do, and both of our consultants are there to kind of support you. And our DMs are always open, and we never want anyone to kind of struggle in this space because we acknowledge how difficult it can be at times as well.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you so much. That was amazing. I love that. Progress not perfect. I feel like that's something that a lot of people can use, and just always support them by using that statement. So thanks again. It's been really, really, really useful, as we said. I feel like it's going to inspire a lot of people to start their equality, diversity, inclusion sort of journey within their internal comms. So that's brilliant.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.